Shalom and welcome to another edition of Parsha Talk. I'm Rabbi Elliot Malamed in Highland Park, New Jersey, at the Highland Park Conservative Temple Congregation, Anshe Emet. And joining me, my good friend, Saba, Rabbi Jeremy Kalmanovsky of the Anshe Chesed in New York City, Rabbi Barry Chesler, Solomon Schechter Day School of Long Island. Big shout out, first of all, Mazel Tov again to Rabbi Kalmanovsky.
Thank you, thank
And
you. And my spectacularly cute grandson. We're recording this on
amazing,
Monday. Baby's
unbelievable.
only Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, 5 days old, but Briss on Thursday.
We are offering blessings. May this child grow up Torah Masin Tovim.
You
Amen.
have to get a little Parsha Talk T-shirt for him.
We got to
Torah
get
Chukah
a
Masin Tovim.
Parsha Talk's newest fan.
That's it.
Speaking of fans, thank you, Yaakov Epstein. Good, you sent a beautiful note, and we have others who are regular listeners. Eric Wasser, Cantor Rabbi Cantor, and lots of other people who are writing in to
Yes.
us. Thank you very, very much for comments and for being such loyal viewers, listeners of Parsha Talk on any of your podcast platforms. We just do this on YouTube. Whatever happens, we haven't made it viral yet, but one day, one of the
I think
things.
we'll get the virus first.
Okay, Hukkat Balak, double Parsha this week to bring us up to date with our brothers and sisters in Israel. Double Parsha. There's too much to talk about. But I want to focus on one scene in Hukkat, and we may have talked about it before. It doesn't matter. It's you know what I want this session to be therapy. Okay, uh, this is so difficult to understand. This story. I am deeply troubled by this story. I'm deeply troubled by the story because of its consequences. I'm also deeply troubled by the story because everybody seems to be deeply troubled by the story, and nobody seems to have a good, coherent answer as to why Moses is punished so severely in this instance. Although we can arrive at some good thoughts here. My springboard for this is that in looking up some commentary, I stumbled on Or HaChaim. Rabbi Chaim Ibn Attar is an 18th century commentator who I don't really like to read because he's just so long and just so complicated. And he goes on for pages and pages and pages here. And I'm going like, what's your problem, man? Why? What's going on? He lists 10 reasons why this, Moses sins here. So what we should do, let's just study this piece, okay?
That's good.
Okay, so chapter 20, verse 7, God says to Moses, Kach et hamateh, take the staff, v'akel et ha'edah, gather up the people, ata v'Aaron achicha, you and Aaron your brother, v'dibartem el hasela, and you'll speak to the rock, le'enehem, before their eyes, v'natan memav, and it will give its water, v'otzet alehem mayim min hasela, and you will extract water from the rock, vishkita et ha'edah et biram, and from that water you will give water to the people and to their flocks. I think that's we should stop there. Okay, let's stop. Kachet hamateh. The mateh. Last week we had a mateh. We had mateh shel Aharon. The mateh. So which mateh is he talking? Which staff is he talking about here? Kach et hamateh. Okay.
Well, there's only one Mateh, right? It's the one that did the miracles in Egypt.
So it's
Which belongs to Aaron, right? But Moses also, at the Red Sea, Moses also, it's God says, take your staff. So it's a little, it could be Aaron's staff, it could be a shared staff, it could be two different ones, but it clearly, part of the complication of this is the magic wand quality. Like, if it's God, why do you need a staff? Why don't you just
so
blow on
here
the rock?
this is the idea here, okay? Because the mateh played a significant role last week. It was mateh shel Aharon. It sprouted flowers, and the reason why I'm talking about it, I wrote all about it. I got very excited about the fact that there was a miraculous flowering of the staff, and it turned into almonds, etc., etc. So, and they placed it in the Ohel Moed, basically, and became a sign. And so now, what if the mateh here is that mateh? We're taking out the sign against rebellion, the sign that warns them against rebellion, and we're going to put Moses, take your staff, take the staff, that is the staff that preempts rebellion. Gather them up. And okay, so then you and your brother have this brotherly moment in front of the rock, and then Vidibartem elasela, speak to the rock. Okay, now it's at that point that I lose it. Okay, I go like, what do you mean? Speak to the rocks. Vidibartem elasela, speak to the rock. What is he supposed to do? What do you? I mean, I'm going to say, Jeremy, if we're in front of a group of campers, and you get this commandment, what are you going to do?
It is not it's not impossible, by the way. I appreciate that that we one way to read the story, a very prevailing way, but not the only way to read the story, is that Moses failed to sanctify God by whacking instead of using your words. And debatim el hasela could mean and speak in the presence of the rock, like
Right,
not
that's I think what Ramban says ultimately.
it's not to the rock because it's it's like, I mean, I love praying at the kotel, but it's just like it just begs you to make that not very pious joke. You were davening, what
So,
was it like? It's like talking to a rock. um, it's possible that it's actually speak at the rock and not to the rock,
well,
but
what would it be if it was talk in front of the rock or
talk
talk
in front of the rock. Talk in front
Well,
Vidibartem
of
that's where
lifnei
the people
hasela?
are gathered. He's supposed to talk to the people, tell them what's going to happen. That's how miracles take place at this level.
So, I mean, what about this idea that you know you toast the wine, or you speak to the you speak you're
No,
not
no. So you have the people gathered, and you say to them, I've heard your complaint. You don't have water. I'm about to get you water.
okay.
I'm going to strike the rock.
V'dibartem el hasela leinehem.
No, but he's already debartem el hasela. By
okay.
addressing the people at the rock, he is the debartem el hasela, as Jeremy pointed out. Doesn't mean he's trying. The rock is not the object of the speech. It's not the audience. The rock is a mute witness. It's the location where the people are, and that's where Moses is talking.
So
And
so
even so, and even
It's
so,
a location. It's not
yes,
a
I think that's totally plausible. It doesn't have to be that. It's totally plausible because even if you want to take that route, which I think has its merits, it's still you can still pull up the polarity of a verbally triggered versus uh, uh,
a
uh,
kinetic.
a kinetic trigger, because the speech that Moses would give to the people, le'enehem, even if it is at the location of the rock, not to the rock, is still, this rock will give forth its water, not smack to give forth its
right.
water.
But Raman has a great phrase. So he says at one point, and his comment goes on for well over a page on this verse. But he says, "Ve'ein hanes gadol b'dibur yoter me'ahaka'a." That it's as great a miracle if you hit it as if you speak to it. There's no difference.
It's like there's in Tractate Ta'anit, I think this is Hanina ben Dosa, one of the other uh, um, one of the other wonder working rabbis is going to make uh, he's going to light water. He's going to ignite a lamp with water, and says, you can't do that. It's not going to work. He said, the one who speaks to the oil and makes it light will speak to the water and make it light. God can do whatever God wants, and it's no greater miracle to light shemen zayit, olive oil, than it is to light water. And of course, that's those folks for the most part did not really believe in the laws of physics, but so it's harder for us. But I think that that makes sense. Whether you hit it or you speak to it, still a pretty great miracle.
So I'm tempted to do to go into the geology here, which is that from time to time, I've noticed this on bike rides and hikes. There are streams that come out of rocks, and the reason for this is because when water, when rain comes down into the earth, it goes into the ground, and there are, subterranean, there are, streams underneath the ground, and in order uh, get water from the ground, you do need to move the earth around, okay? Um, and it strikes me that
Strikes me.
striking is the way to do this. You gotta move things around, I'm not sure how far fetched this is, but v'dibartem el hasela le'enehem v'natan memav could mean, you have a conversation with them, and I want to kind of demagicify this by saying, you speak to it, and then it's going to give, maybe it's, you're gonna analyze where it is, you're going to look at the formation, you're going to say, look, the probability of the water is probably here, let's see what happens here, and you have to do something to get the water. Okay.
The reason
Well,
I
okay. So, but you're going to hit it. We know that from Schmo. You're going to hit the rock, and the rock is going to let loose the water. But it seems to me that the key verse is the phrase in Pasuk Yud 10 that's not there.
Go
So
ahead.
it says that Moses and Aaron gathered the people in
El
front of the
Tanei
rock up
Asela.
in Esela, and then there's a missing clause, and then Moses loses it.
What's the missing
Vayomer lahem
clause?
shimuna morima min hasel
so
hazeh
what's the
tosilach hamayim.
missing?
What happened that all of a sudden Moses is so angry?
Well, what happened? What
Well,
according?
so I think by the way that we started a teeny bit early in our discussion because there's one thing that happens repeatedly in the book of Numbers that is guaranteed. It was true with Datan va'Aviram. It's true with the manna. It's true, repeatedly in this book. When the people say, "I'm sorry we ever left Egypt. Why did you bring us here? There's no food to eat. There's no figs. There's no pomegranate. There's not even any water." And so Moses is, and that is absolutely guaranteed every single time to just enrage God. And Moses doesn't like it very much either. And in this case, I think that our discussion should have started there because
With chapter 20, verse 1. Yeah. Yeah.
because part of our um, part of our one of the things that we talked about is before we started recording is that the part of the blame may in fact be upon the Israelites because they said that thing. And so when Moses loses it, I think it's in the context of the people having said that most anti-covenantal, faithless, despairing thing. So Shimuna Hamorim, listen up, you rebels. Hanotzila Hamayim min Asela. You want to watch us bring forth water from this rock? Is I think like an almost totally predictable Bamidbar-ish kind of response.
Why does he have to do this? Why? you know, and what is it about him? I mean, all of these things that have happened. I mean, we're recording on Monday, so I'm still fresh off of Shabbos. I'm still fresh off of the rebellion, Korach rebellion. I'm still fresh off of the fire, the plague, the flowering staff, and I want to like. I want calm. I want the calm of this, and
Bad news, you're still in
I'm
Bamidbar.
still in Bamidbar, and there's no
40
calm.
years. 40 years
And
you got.
well, on top of it, and one of the contextual things that we omitted was the death of Miriam. And it says, so go back to chapter 20. It says she died. Vatamat sham Miriam vatikaver sham, and she's buried there, buried in the middle of the desert, buried nowhere. Velo haya mayim la'ida. There was no water for the people. Vayikahalu al Moshe ve'Aaron. So they ganged up on Moses and Aaron. And so We
Well,
have
now
built on
I just
that
want to
the
point out.
beautiful midrash of Be'er Miriam, etc.
I just want to point out.
So it's interesting
Well,
that
no, that's
because
Jeremy.
Vayikahalu,
Go ahead.
Vayikahalu, they ganged up on him, and the word kahal
Yeah,
is repeated. There's, many biblical stories
yeah.
have that light word thing of a repeat word, which gives a thematic unity. Lama hevetem et kahal Adonai el
Sure.
hamidbar. This is, you brought the community, and then God says, and vayavo Moshe v'Aaron mipnei
Okay.
hakahal. They, he's in the presence of the community, and then God says, kach damateh, take the staff, v'hakhel et ha'edah, bring the people into this kahal. So you have this uh, kind of, I guess, a yin and yang, or a little bit of a midah keneged midah, measure for measure. The gang is the community, and Moses has to bring them together. And I don't really know what
Well,
to say.
maybe that's a very interesting
so
point, which is that they've ganged up on him, and now we're asking God is asking Moses and Aaron to kind of reassemble them, to recreate them, to
but
re.
it's not quite true that they ganged up, right? Because it's a nifao, it's passive. They were ganged up. And it suggests that they're not necessarily the agent of the gathering. And then the verse, I think was 8 or 9, the one that we started with,
Hakel.
Moses and Aaron are gathering them together. And maybe Moses and Aaron are in some way responsible for this gathering of the people here when they begin their complaint. And then that would be a pretty weighty sin, I think, Jeremy, for which they would be a serious punishment.
Well, so let's go further, okay? So Vayakilu Moshe v'Aaron they put them together. He says what he says. Shami nasela hazeh shimu nahamorim. Okay, just give me an interpretation of that.
Listen how
Listen,
to.
you teachers.
Have you ever used that in school? Like
No, but now I will.
now you will.
Shimu
Shimuna
nahamorim.
Morim. Well, Moses, our late teacher, my late member of Anshe Chesed, Yochanan Mufs, uh, wrote that the prophet is the guy who advocates for God to the people and for the people to God. And he loves them both. The prophet has to love both God and love the people. That's how the connection happens. But Shimuna Hamorim, I mean, God frequently will say to Moses, that's it, I'm done. I'm going to kill these people and start all over. And Moses, no, 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 you can't do that. Now Moses is advocating against the people, which is like a bad thing for a prophet. A prophet has to be for the people, and now he's calling them, probably in the sight of God or in the hearing of God. He's just yelling at them for being rebels.
So would you say is this the moment he loses it? Is
I
or
mean,
did he
that's
lose?
where I believe, if
It's
I'm not.
hard to figure out another place, right? Given the language of this particular verse, it's hard to think that there's another verse that carries more of a punch than this one. Because
Okay,
this is so loaded. Listen, you rebels, bad enough. Shall we bring forth the water? Now
That's
Moses is arrogating to
so
himself the divine role.
Yeah, that is another
You know,
among those
everything in this
various
one
reasons.
verse, everything is topsy-turvy.
That is another of the things that, as Elliot said before, the Or HaChaim says, well, there's 10 different things that people say, and if there's 10, there's not one that's very good.
exactly.
If you have to come up with 10 reasons, 10 explanations, none of them is decisive. But another of the things that people say is, um, that he says, he arrogates to himself, Notzi lachem, we will bring forth water, when what he should have said, as he said in the numerous previous miracles, stand back and
Watch God perform.
All right,
watch
so
God's
so
rescue.
so as I said, this is a bit of a therapy because I know there have been times, even in the pulpit rabbinate, where it's not that I've lost my temper, but where something that someone did was so irritating that I couldn't hold myself back. And I'll give the example, and it's a good example because it didn't apply to a member; it was applying to a visitor. And so
This is going to be great.
because if it applied to a member, I'd be in real trouble. But so one day it was a person came to shul on Shabbos, and they were wearing their
That's still
torn
something.
ribbon for Shiva. Okay, so I said to myself, "Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Don't say anything. Don't say anything." And then I said, "But you can't wear your torn thing in shul. You can't." And it started. Want you do a machloket in your head. On the one hand, you shouldn't say it. On the other hand, so go up gently and say, it's not appropriate to wear the torn, and why this is bothering me so much. It's bothering me because it's Shabbos, it's public, and the whole structure of the laws of mourning. So I gently went up to this person and I said, "It's Shabbat. I see your and Avela. It's the custom not to wear the torn garment on Shabbat." So she gave me a look and said, "Oh, wear whatever." And then I said, "Okay, okay. So at what point are you God's policeman?" My late teacher, Rabbi Israel Silverman, said, "I'm not God's policeman. I can't go up to people and say to them, you're not
Well,
wearing a kippah. No."
I could spend all day, every day telling people what they do wrong, and I do not choose to do that. That will not build any good relationships. It is, however, I mean, this is a complicated situation, obviously, and people come into shul at a vulnerable time, and you want to greet them,
Exactly. No,
you
and
want
I
them.
understand it. I understand it. Yeah.
But the counterclaim here, which I don't, I've had that, we've all had that situation before. The counterclaim is that our job is to make the tradition meaningful, so that people find themselves in it. They find the
Yeah.
meaning of their practice in it. So to say to somebody and figure out the exact right words, something like it's not just the custom is actually you're doing the wrong thing. It's what we ultimately want to say is that it is balancing uh, grief and communal celebration in a certain way. And so on Shabbat, the
So
reason
what I would add here, the first summer, as Mashkiach Camp Ramah, our late teacher and colleague, Rabbi Eliezer Diamond, was a Rava Machshir, and he said that sometimes the best thing that Mashkiach could do is look the other way. That not everything has to be addressed right at that moment. And I think in your case, especially after the fact, the wisdom was to look away because
So,
what
and
would have
this is
happened?
the reason why I raise this off. It's obvious because is this a point where Moses should have just kind of like you can feel in the story the anger is just brewing up, and it's like Moses just let it
let it
go,
go,
let it
buddy.
go, let it
Let it
Yeah.
go,
go,
buddy.
and just
Because
use this as a teaching moment, and use this as just get a sense of humor.
we,
I love
we
Right.
have
some
this.
of
But it
the-
was a teachable moment, and he was the lesson that was learned.
he was the lesson.
We have this all the time. I'm sure. In addition to those things, when people, just irk you so much, it's hard to go on. There are certainly innumerable times in your life when somebody has done something irksome, provocative, not lehachis, and you can see through it to the pain that produces the bad behavior. So in this case, that anti-covenantal thing of we never should have left Egypt. That place was great. This place stinks. Um, you have to be able to say, Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to be able to say, they're thirsty. They're worried that they're at the end of their ropes. And so if the wrong thing that he has done is verbal abuse, which is those authorities who say that that's the problem, Shimuna Hamorim, you're speaking to God's people, speaking to the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you're yelling at them. That's verbal abuse. His own powers of empathy should have been awakened to the crisis that these people felt.
Right, and so I feel for him because he it got the better of him. His anger got the better of him, and let's say he lost it. He lost it. So
Right.
then, okay,
So what's the lesson?
don't lose it.
So I think it's the opposite. I think the lesson for us is that even Moses can't be perfect. That even Moses has a lapse of judgment, and it
we
reminds me of
know. I
something
like
that
the way
John McCain said once, that no one withstands torture forever.
Right.
Everyone has a breaking point,
We
and you have
know
to remember
that of
that.
Moses already. We know that he's lost it on many occasions here, and
Well,
it's
I mean, you guys
again.
know that. You
But
guys
not
know
like
that.
this, because this is the only place where God says what he says in verse
Well,
12.
let's okay. So let's
Well,
go.
you guys know that I feel that this story is a cover story, and that Moses is barred from. There's any number of reasons why Moses could be barred from entering the Promised Land. It's just time. He's 120. He himself will say, "Lo ucha latzeit v'lavo." I can no longer do this job. I can't. I'm too old already. And he's not a general. Joshua's the general, and he's going to be needed. But I think that I read the story ultimately as a cover story that the problem with the rock involved something else with the rock when he smashed the tablets, which is a similar story of Moses losing it. Although there are ways to read the golden calf story and Moses's, sort of violent response towards the tablets as the appropriate thing in the wake of a huge betrayal of the people's idolatry. Maybe his rage back then in Exodus was the kind of appropriate response to such a terrible betrayal, but he took it out on the rock. He took it out on the stone tablets that Hashem himself had engraved. And here too, there's a taking it out on an inanimate object that's the
So
Gemara at one point says to be seized with to be seized with a rage is like worshiping idols. Like you lose control of your own spirit.
But
And I think that's possibly the reading here.
it's fascinating reading. But what's interesting to me is who does Moses really take it out on? He doesn't take it out on the rock. He takes it out on the people,
He
right?
yells at the people, but he
The
smacks the
rock
rock.
is the instrument for his anger, but
He
the
yells at the
people is
people,
the object.
he yells at the people, but he smacks the rock, which is a violent act. There's I think this is the Kedushat Levi. It's one of the Hasidic masters that describes this as a lesson in leadership. Like we always love those stories. Lesson in leadership that you can speak to people and they might do what you want or they might not do what you want, but the powers of persuasion are the appropriate venue. And you can smack them over the head and make them do what you want. And you'll, in some respects, get the result that you want when you smack the rock. But it's not really the true vision of religious leadership, which is to speak to people and persuade them that what they really want to do is give forth all the
So,
abundant water.
so let me pose this as we bring this down to a conclusion, because so the denouement at the end of the story is Vayomer Adonai el Moshe el Aaron. God says to Moses and Aaron, Yan lohem mantem be, because you have not demonstrated your trust in me,
Trusted me.
lakdisheni, to sanctify me before the congregation, before the people of Israel. Lachen lo taviu et hakahal hazeh. You therefore will not bring this people into the land, asher natati lahem, that I'm giving to you. What's interesting is God doesn't have an angry reaction here. The
You
moment
have to read the next verse.
well, Yan asher hema me meriva sheravu b'nei Yisrael Adonai v'kadesh bam.
That's God's anger. May
No,
Meriva.
no.
Yes,
Hema meriva.
absolutely. Who is naming this?
This is the narrator naming it. This is not who's speaking in verse
Who do you
13.
think wrote the Torah, Rabbi Gallivan?
Oh my God.
Well, wait a second. But then Barry, what are the final two words? Hema memriva sheravu bnei Israel et Adonai vayikadesh bam, and God's sanctity is ultimately affirmed. So is that that seems to me a happy ending. Um,
For God.
Forgot.
yeah.
Go back to my question here, okay, which is he doesn't get it does not express divine wrath, anger at Moses.
Okay, so a question for you then, Elliot. So is there any case in the Torah where both God and Moses are angry at the same time? Or is it always one
There's
or the
plenty of
other?
Eichar of
But
God.
right. Well, and there's also Vayicharaf of Moses where he says, I can't deal with those people anymore. But I think that in all those cases, the other party is not angry.
Uh-huh.
So that would be true here as well.
I would go differently here. I would say, you
Well,
know,
explain though.
I'll explain. God has said, God has witnessed this, and so where I was going to go with this before is, you'll hear the echo of the politics here, is that there is now daylight between God and Moses. Okay, that's not good. That's not good for the congregation. That's not good for the people. When there's a gap between what God says and what Moses does, and that is demonstrated in front of everyone. That's deeply unsettling to the whole system. And so, in order to recalibrate the system, there has to be a kind of a consequence for this, a consequence that is not necessarily punitive, a consequence that says, look, we just can't, we're not operating right properly here, and your term will end at the Jordan, basically. So it's yeah, you're going to continue, but you're now you're given notice. You're given your what is it, half a year notice, that in half a year you're not going to bring the people in, and B, you happen to actually, live out your term on this earth. Okay.
By the way, just back to the manna episode in Bahalotcha, the people are whining, Vayishma Moshe ta'am bochel mishpachotav, ish lefetach oalo. Moses hears the people, family by family, standing in their tents and complaining. Vayicharaf Adonai me'od, uve'enei Moshe ra. And
Yeah.
God was enraged, and Moses thought it was pretty bad too.
Okay.
So there you have Moses and God in the same unhappy place.
I
Okay.
don't think
So
God needs to be angry here, and that's why it doesn't say he's angry here. It just says, "Look,
last question for Jeremy though.
go."
So the bomb in verse 13, does that refer to Mei Merivah or Bnei Israel?
Or Moses and Aaron.
They're not
Uh,
mentioned in the verse.
yeah, okay, true that. Um, but because Yanlo Hemantim Bilahakti Sheni, because you did not trust me to sanctify me the way that I would have wanted.
So you're
Uh,
kind of reading it as one long sentence.
yeah, I could do that. I mean,
Kind of.
that was my instinctive thing, but
Okay.
actually, I think grammatically speaking, syntactically speaking, it probably is. Uh, it probably is the mayim that is the object of the pronoun bam.
All right.
These are the
Well,
waters of contention uh, through which the Lord was sanctified.
so I
By
mentioned
punishing Moses and Aaron.
I mentioned at the beginning, this is a bit of a therapy. I don't know if we answered all the questions here, but I want to say I feel better.
Well, and with good therapy, you want to come back next week too.
I feel better. I feel better because we had a good time. We had a good time hashing it out. The problems are going to remain. They're going to remain this week, next week, and next year. We'll probably visit this again. Probably be anguished about it. I think that what is interesting. It does trigger something in me, and you heard me react to it, because there are lots of things that we all understand intuitively about anger and about a temper and about saying things and not saying things, knowing when to say, knowing to keep your mouth, using humor and all sorts of techniques to do this, all of which I think ends in tragedy. But we had such a good time doing this.
Tragedy is a good word here because to support the point that you made. I mean, I don't have to double down and say it's absolutely correct, but if God's not angry, just sad,
Yeah,
then that's a tragic thing. That Miriam, Moses, and Aaron. By the way, the Haftarah for this double parsha that God said in Micha chapter whatever that is
6.
6, that God sends good leaders, Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. They were amazing. They think of what they did. They took the people from Egypt, led them through the desert, and I know we've talked about this in previous years, that very sad scene which Moses and Aaron go up the mountain, but only one of them's coming down.
yeah,
There's a kind of like mortality to this,
sure.
and if I'm right that this is a cover story about smashing the tablets, maybe that had to happen. But it's still sad. It's still an act of destruction as opposed to construction.
Well, I feel good.
Well said.
I feel good
All
that we
right,
talked about
gang.
it. All right. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate it. We honor you. And we'll see you next week on the next edition of Parasha. Everyone, Shavua Tov. Wonderful week. Good Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.
Bye-bye. Shabbat shalom.